Today, we are not going to talk about the usual boring culinary record at the local fair, absolutely not. We are going to talk about an amazing venture at Guinness World Records, the longest tiramisu. What we are about to explore in this new in-depth feature is a true undercover operation, a detailed analysis of the most hidden technological secrets behind a literally titanic undertaking. In short, everyone knows the final result, what made the headlines, but almost no one knows what really happened behind the scenes to prevent it all from turning into a resounding disaster. Get ready, because we are about to reveal the invisible food engineering that allowed a delicious tiramisu to incredibly bend the laws of physics. Imagine the scene. Let's travel back to April 26, 2026. We are certainly not in the comfort zone of a sterile, temperature-controlled pastry shop, far from it. We are at Chelsea Old Town Hall in London, a hostile, high-tension environment, packed to the brim with 1,500 people. This wasn't the stage for a quiet performance, but a veritable battlefield. The environmental conditions were practically the antithesis, the worst nightmare, of what is required to preserve such a delicate dessert. 440 meters and 58 centimeters. It's a measurement that literally makes your head spin. We are talking about the official length that earned it a Guinness World Record. Think about it, an endless trail made of ladyfingers, coffee, cocoa, and tons of mascarpone cream. But, and here's the real twist, as crazy as it may seem, reaching this enormous mileage was actually the easiest part of the entire mission. So, let's step away from the main spotlight for a moment and delve into the background, into those high-pressure dynamics that the cheering audience never even remotely perceived. If length wasn't the main issue, what was at risk of making it all fail miserably? What were the ruthless rules of engagement the judges had imposed? And above all, how do you manage such a critical mass of fresh ingredients in a totally unpredictable environment? Well, that's exactly the crux of the matter. There was a ruthless hidden rule that raised the stakes to unthinkable levels. The Guinness judges weren't just concerned with length. The tiramisu had to maintain a consistent minimum height of 8 centimeters, along every single inch of the track. This meant that if the cream sagged even a millimeter, if the structure collapsed in even a tiny section of those 440 meters, it would be immediately disqualified. A total failure. No second chances. And to understand how real and terrifying this threat was, we must consider the passage of time. The innovation architect behind this undertaking described the operation, and I quote, as 7 hours of technological hell. 7 agonizing hours to complete the assembly, the meticulous decoration, and the inflexible official measurements. And all of this, remember, outside a refrigerator, with an ambient temperature well above 22 degrees Celsius, 72 degrees Fahrenheit, and the oppressive humidity generated by a packed crowd. It was a veritable time bomb. With every passing minute, the heat worked silently to destroy the dessert. Now let's delve into the microscopic level to understand who these implacable enemies were. Mascarpone cream, folks, isn't a solid block. It's a fragile, delicate three-dimensional network composed of fat globules, proteins, and tiny air bubbles. Under the thermal stress of heat and the mechanical stress of handling, this network undergoes devastating attacks. The water begins to migrate outward, causing fatal dehydration. The heat literally breaks the emulsions, causing them to lose their shape. The creaminess vanishes, and gravity inexorably pushes the air out, threatening to transform a soft, light foam into a heavy, shapeless puddle. And if you think that keeping the structure standing was the only problem, you're wrong. There was a final complication. The definitive one. Each portion of this immense tiramisu had already been pre-sold to 1,500 people for charity. This completely changed the rules of the game. The dessert couldn't simply survive for 7 hours, as a beautiful monument to be admired, and that was it. It had to arrive at the fateful moment of tasting while remaining impeccably soft, velvety, and irresistibly melting on the palate. Which brings us straight to the intellectual heart of food science. The supreme paradox. How do you achieve such a gravity-defying structural stability without destroying the absolute pleasure of taste? There was a lazy, and let's say obvious, solution: fill the cream with aggressive stabilizers, excessive hydrocolloids, or perhaps xanthan gum. That would have guaranteed those 8 centimeters of height for days on end. But what would happen in the mouth? The cream would have stiffened, becoming rubbery, hard, completely devoid of that unique delicacy that makes tiramisu a global icon. It would have been an absolute palate disaster, and serving that stuff to 1,500 paying guests simply wasn't an option. And that's exactly where true innovation comes in, the far from obvious solution that allowed technology to intervene, but quietly, unnoticed. Let's talk about Gelecta Cream. Mind you, this isn't just another ingredient tossed into the mix, it's a true clean label technology, a clean label that acts as a systemic, multi-level, and most importantly, completely invisible engine. Instead of using chemical force, food engineers designed an internal architecture capable of solving individual structural problems, working in perfect synergy. Okay, let's geek out for a moment and dive into this engineering marvel. How does this 3-stage motor work in practice? First, edible gelatin creates the primary framework, giving the cream its essential body. Second, plant fibers construct highly sophisticated internal micronetworks. Their job is to act like a smart sponge to slow down water migration, diffusing dehydration before it even occurs. Third, and perhaps the most fascinating step, are plant proteins. They act as veritable protective shields at the interfaces between water, fat, and air, mechanically reinforcing that delicate 3D network we mentioned earlier. Zero compromise on flavor, but an absolutely impenetrable scientific defense against environmental stress. Now, just look at the result of this invisible engineering architecture to understand the scale of the success. A triumphant product, this cream defied gravity and the high temperatures of a packed room for 7 interminable hours, and emerged at the end of this technological hell completely stable, perfectly creamy, and virtually invincible. The crucial 8 centimeters of height were maintained literally down to the last millimeter, and that melt-in-the-mouth sensation left 1,500 people speechless. So, what do we take away from this incredible story? We witnessed an event with historic significance, the exact moment when Italy's immense and often untouchable culinary tradition merged seamlessly with cutting-edge engineering innovation. This feat clearly demonstrates that true leaps forward in the food industry never come from settling for compromises or distorting the essence of a product, but rather by applying science to elevate tradition far beyond its normal physical limits. And there's one last, powerful thought that emerged from the notes of the designers of this record, which I want to share with you. True paradoxes, seemingly impossible challenges, aren't solved with shortcuts or with quick tricks. They are solved with a precious resource, time. Time to test, to try again, to have the courage to discard the easiest and most obvious solution to build something perfect, step by step. If mastering the impossible requires such dedication and phenomenal patience, one wonders what culinary paradox food science will conquer next. Thank you all for following this in-depth analysis. Until next time.